October 24, 1944. The Vosges Mountains of eastern France. 275 American soldiers push forward through dense fir forest. They are Texans of the 1st Battalion, 141st Infantry, 36th Division. Their commander is Lieutenant Colonel Marty Higgins. By dusk, they are cut off behind German lines, surrounded on a wooded ridge by elements of 2 German divisions. They have no resupply route. 2 rescue attempts by the 36th Division's other battalions will fail. The Corps commander orders the 442nd Regimental Combat Team forward. The 442nd is the only all-Japanese-American combat regiment in the U.S. Army. Their families are behind barbed wire in American camps. Watch for Daniel Inoue. Watch for PFC Barney Hajiro. Watch for the moment a general asks where the regiment is, and the commander says, "That's all that's left." February 19, 1942. 2 months after Pearl Harbor. President Roosevelt signs Executive Order 9066. Within 90 days, 120,000 persons of Japanese ancestry are removed from the West Coast. 2/3 are U.S. citizens by birth. They are interned in 10 War Relocation Authority camps. Manzanar, Tule Lake, Topaz, Heart Mountain, Gila River, Poston, Grenada, Minidoka, Rower, Jerome. The camps are surrounded by barbed wire, guarded by U.S. Army military police with M1 Garand rifles. The internees lose their businesses, homes, and most personal property. Total economic loss in 1980 currency, $3 billion. On February 1, 1943, the U.S. War Department announces the formation of an all-Japanese-American volunteer combat unit. The unit is designated the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. Recruitment is conducted from Hawaii, where the local Issei population was not interned, and from inside the WRA camps. The recruiters visit the camps. They invite Issei men to volunteer. The men are American citizens. Their parents are inside the wire. Of approximately 23,000 Issei men of military age in the camps, 1,200 volunteered. The remaining 21,000 declined. The 442nd was activated at Camp Shelby, Mississippi, on February 1, 1943. Initial strength, 3,800 men. It was attached, on activation, to the 100th Infantry Battalion, 1,400 Issei from the Hawaii National Guard, federalized June 1940. Combined strength, approximately 5,200 men. The largest concentration of Asian American soldiers in the entire U.S. Army. The unit's motto, chosen by the men themselves, was, "Go for broke." Hawaiian pidgin gambling slang. It meant, shoot the works. There was friction within the unit. Hawaii volunteers, 60% of strength, called the mainland volunteers, Kotonks. The mainland volunteers called the Hawaii men, Buddhaheads. The friction ended in 1943, when the Hawaii volunteers visited an Arkansas WRA camp called Rower. They saw what their mainland comrades' families lived in. They never made the joke again. The 442nd completed combat training at Camp Shelby in April 1944. The unit shipped to North Africa in June, then to Italy in July. Through summer 1944, the 442nd fought in central Italy, Volterra, Cesena, Livorno. By October it had been moved to France, attached to the U.S. 7th Army for the Vosges. The Vosges form the eastern border of France with Germany. Low peaks, but dense forest, steep slopes, narrow valleys. By October 1944, the German army had constructed prepared defenses anticipating an Allied advance toward the Rhine. The U.S. 36th Infantry Division, Texas National Guard, commanded by Major General John Dahlquist, was assigned to clear the Vosges between Bruyères and the German border. By October 23, the 36th had captured Bruyères, Belmont, and Bifontaine. Its lead element was the 1st Battalion of the 141st Infantry Regiment under Lieutenant Colonel Marty Higgins. On October 24, Higgins's battalion pushed 2 kilometers further east. By mid-afternoon, German counterattack closed behind them. Higgins's battalion was now surrounded on a wooded ridge 2 kilometers behind the new German line. Original strength, 275 officers and men. Higgins's first radio report read, "We are in good defensive position. We can hold. Send relief." His radio was hit by mortar shrapnel 90 minutes later. On October 25, the 36th Division's 2nd Battalion attempted relief. It failed. They lost 48 men in 2 hours. On October 26, a second relief attempt also failed. The German positions were prepared, dug in, supported by mortars and machine guns. On the afternoon of October 26, Dahlquist sent the 442nd forward. He gave the order at 1600 hours. The 442 ND's commander was Colonel Charles W. Pence, age 46, of Indianapolis. He had commanded the unit through 14 months of training. His 3 battalion commanders were Lieutenant Colonels Alfred Persall, James Hanley, and Gordon Singles, Singles being the 100th Infantry Battalion commander. On October 27, the 442nd began its advance toward the lost Battalion Ridge. Dense forest. Slopes between 20 and 30 degrees. Cold rain. German defenses opposing them, 1,400 infantry of the 16th Volksgrenadier Division. 18 machine guns. 6 mortars. 3 75mm anti-tank guns. The 442nd advanced on a 400-meter front. Casualty rates exceeded 5% per hour for the first 6 hours. By afternoon of October 27, the lead battalion had advanced 500 meters and taken 70 casualties. The lost Battalion Ridge was 3 kilometers further east. On October 28, Persall's 3rd Battalion received its objective, a rocky promontory designated Hill 617. Held by 120 German infantry with 3 machine gun positions. Persall ordered Companies I and K to take Hill 617 by direct frontal assault. Captains Joe Byrne and Stanley Akita briefed their men at 0800. The assault began at 0915. The assault on Hill 617 became one of the most cited individual engagements of the U.S. Army's history of the Second World War. It was conducted as a direct uphill charge across 200 meters of open ground. Fixed bayonets. 8 ranks deep. Shouting the unit motto, "Go for broke." Private First Class Barney Hajiro, age 28, of Maui, Hawaii, was the lead scout of K Company. He advanced ahead of his company through machine gun fire. He single-handedly attacked 2 German machine gun positions with grenades and rifle fire. He killed approximately 12 German infantry before reaching the hill crest. Hajiro was wounded by machine gun fire in his right arm and right thigh. He continued advancing for 40 meters before collapsing. His attack opened the path for K Company. Private George Sakato, age 23, of Colton, California, whose family was at the Heart Mountain WRA camp, charged across 150 meters of open ground on the right flank. Sakato killed 12 Germans, captured 34, and led the assault that took the hill's eastern face. He was the first to reach the summit. He was 23. His mother and 3 younger sisters were behind barbed wire when he did it. The capture of Hill 617 cost K Company 47 killed and 120 wounded out of 212 men. Company I's losses were similar. But the German line on the route to the lost battalion was broken. On October 29, the 442 ND's lead element reached a second German line on a wooded saddle 1 kilometer from the lost battalion. Fighting through the day was at close quarters, often hand-to-hand. Lieutenant Mut Sakamoto, age 25, of Honolulu, was the first 442nd officer to reach the lost battalion's lines on the afternoon of October 30, 1944. He crawled the final 20 meters across an open clearing under sporadic German rifle fire. He raised his hands in the standard recognition signal. The Texan perimeter sentry, Sergeant Owen Cobb of San Antonio, initially raised his Garand to fire. He saw the U.S. Army uniform. He hesitated. Sakamoto called out, in English with a strong Hawaiian accent, the agreed-upon recognition phrase. He said, "I'm an American. I am here to relieve you." Cobb lowered his rifle. He stood up. He walked across the clearing and embraced Sakamoto. He gave Sakamoto a half-eaten chocolate D-bar he had been saving. Sakamoto took one bite. He gave the rest to the Texan corporal beside Cobb. The relief of the lost battalion was complete by sundown on October 30, 1944. Of 275 Texans surrounded, 211 were alive at relief. 64 had died of wounds, exposure, or German sniper fire over the 8 days. Of the 211 alive, only 21 were ambulatory. The 442 ND's casualties during the 5-day rescue were 814 total. 121 were killed in action. An additional 31 died of wounds within 10 days. Total mortality, approximately 152 men. The casualty ratio was approximately 3.8 442nd casualties per Texan rescued. The mortality ratio was approximately 1 Issei dead per 1.5 Texans rescued. On November 12, 1944, 12 days after the rescue, Major General Dahlquist ordered a parade of the 442nd at the divisional headquarters at Bruyères. The 442 ND's 3 battalions, 5,200 men in mid-October, mustered 1,500 for the parade. Many of the missing 2,700 had been wounded. Of those wounded, approximately 300 would never return to the regiment. Dahlquist, observing the parade, asked Colonel Pence, who was leaning on a wooden cane from a leg wound, why so few of his men were on parade. Pence gripped the cane harder. He turned his head slightly toward Dahlquist. He said, in a voice the third rank could clearly hear, "That's all that's left of the regiment, sir." Dahlquist did not respond. He continued the inspection in silence. He did not, in his remaining 6 months of command, ever request another full-strength parade of the 442nd. The 442nd continued combat through April 1945. It returned to Italy in March of that year. Final operations were in the Apennines, supporting the 5th Army's spring advance. On April 21, 1945, near the small Italian town of San Terenzo, 2nd Lieutenant Daniel Ken Inoue was leading a platoon of E Company, 2nd Battalion, in an assault on a German machine gun position. Inoue was 20 years old. He was from Honolulu. He had volunteered from the University of Hawaii's pre-medical program in March 1943, age 18. He had wanted to be a surgeon. He had been at Camp Shelby by April 1943. At Anzio by April 1944. At the Lost Battalion in October 1944. Promoted to 2nd Lieutenant in April 1945. His attack on the Col Musateo Ridge was conducted at 0600 under cover of an American mortar barrage. He led his platoon up an exposed slope toward 3 German machine gun positions. He was hit, in his abdomen, by a German rifle round at 0615. He continued the attack. He killed the first German gun crew with his M1 Garand and a fragmentation grenade. He killed the second crew with his Thompson submachine gun and another grenade. He approached the 3rd position at 0625. As he raised a 3rd grenade to throw, a German Waffen-SS rifleman fired a Panzerfaust at his platoon. The rocket struck Inoue in his right elbow. The fragmentation tore his right arm from his body at the elbow joint. The grenade was still clenched in his right hand. The hand was now detached from his body. The grenade was activated. It would detonate within 4 seconds. Inoue, conscious despite the wound, used his remaining left hand to pry the grenade from the fingers of his severed right hand. He threw the grenade into the German machine gun position. It detonated in the pit. It killed all 3 German gunners. He continued the attack with his Thompson submachine gun, held in his left hand. He killed the position's 2 riflemen. He took the position. The ridge was secured by 0700. Daniel Inoue was evacuated by litter at 0730. He was given morphine, plasma, and emergency triage at the 2nd Battalion Aid Station. His right arm was amputated above the elbow at the 4th Field Hospital at La Spezia at 1400 hours on April 21, 1945. He was 20 years old. He had wanted to be a surgeon. He could not now be a surgeon. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for the attack on May 2, 1945. The Medal of Honor, the highest combat decoration, was not granted. In April 1945, the U.S. Army's Medal of Honor Review Committee for the European Theater had an informal practice. Asian American soldiers whose actions might qualify for the MO were instead awarded the DSC. The reason, in the words of subsequent reviewers, was racial. The Second World War ended on August 14, 1945. The 442nd was deactivated at Camp Shelby on August 15, 1946. On July 15, 1946, the surviving members of the 442nd, approximately 1,800 men, paraded in Washington, D.C. The reviewing officer was President Harry S. Truman. Truman addressed the parade from a small reviewing stand on the ellipse. His remarks were 3 minutes long. They contained one sentence that became the most quoted presidential statement on Asian American military service. He said, "You fought not only the enemy, you fought prejudice, and you have won." The remark was greeted, in the Washington Post's reporting, with 12 seconds of audible silence from the assembled veterans before the applause began. The 442nd became the most decorated unit in the United States Army Ground Forces relative to its strength and length of service. Its men received 9,486 Purple Hearts, 4,000 Bronze Stars, 52 Distinguished Service Crosses, and 1 Medal of Honor. The single MO was awarded to Private First Class Sadao Munamori, posthumously, for an action on April 5, 1945, near Saravezza, Italy. Munamori had thrown himself onto a German fragmentation grenade to save 2 squad mates. He was 22. His mother, Nawa Munamori, was at the Manzanar War Relocation Authority camp in California at the time of his death. The Western Union telegram was delivered to her tar paper barracks on April 20, 1945. Mrs. Munamori received the Medal of Honor at a ceremony at Manzanar on May 17, 1946. The camp had closed 3 months earlier. The barracks had been demolished. She accepted the medal. She said 3 sentences, in Japanese. The U.S. Army interpreter translated them. She said, "My son served his country. His country did not always serve him. I do not know what to do with this medal. I will keep it for him until I see him again." Daniel Inoue returned to civilian life in 1947, age 23, with 1 arm. He could not pursue medicine. He enrolled at the University of Hawaii on the GI Bill. He graduated with a bachelor's in government in 1950. He attended George Washington University Law School from 1950 to 1953. He returned to Hawaii and began the practice of law in Honolulu. He was appointed an assistant prosecutor in 1955. In 1959, when Hawaii became the 50th state, Daniel Inoue was elected its first U.S. representative. He served 3 terms in the House from 1959 to 1963. In 1962, he was elected to the United States Senate. He took office on January 3, 1963. He would hold the seat for 49 years and 11 months. He was joined in 1977 by Spark Matsunaga, also a 442nd veteran. They served together for 13 years until Matsunaga's death in 1990. Through the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s, 442nd veterans dominated Hawaii's elected leadership. By 1985, every statewide office in Hawaii was held by a 442nd veteran or the son of one. On October 23, 1996, the U.S. Congress directed the Department of Defense to review every Distinguished Service Cross awarded to Asian American soldiers in the Second World War. The bill was sponsored by Senator Inoue himself. The DoD was instructed to consider upgrading qualifying awards to the Medal of Honor. The review took 3.5 years. The review concluded in May 2000. 22 Distinguished Service Crosses awarded to Asian American soldiers between 1942 and 1946 had qualified, by all available evidence, for the Medal of Honor. They had been administratively downgraded. The 22 upgraded medals were presented at a ceremony at the White House on June 21, 2000. The presenting officer was President Bill Clinton. Of the 22 recipients, 15 were deceased. Their medals were received on their behalf by widows, children, or grandchildren. Of the 7 living recipients, all attended in person. 6 were 442nd veterans. Senator Daniel K. Issei, age 75, was the senior recipient. He was the first to be called to the podium. President Clinton placed the Medal of Honor around his neck. After receiving his medal, Issei made brief remarks. 35 seconds. 2 sentences. He said, "I am here for one reason. The men who are not here today, who earned this medal in 1944 and 1945, deserve to be recognized." Among the 15 posthumous recipients was PFC Barney Hajiro, the lead scout on Hill 617. Alive at age 84, he was the second living recipient. He had been a banking clerk in Honolulu for 37 years after the war. He had not, until 2000, been able to convince his children that he had personally killed 12 Germans in 5 minutes on a hill called 617. Private George Sakato, alive at age 78, was the third living recipient. He had been a postal carrier in Denver, Colorado, for 42 years. His mother, who had been interned at Hart Mountain when he made the charge in 1944, had died in 1981, without knowing what her son had done on the hill. Sakato told the journalist Tom Brokaw, in October 2000, "She would have known what it meant. She would have shown it to my father. He would have shown it to the camp guards. The guards would have known too." The Civil Liberties Act of 1988, signed by President Reagan on August 10, 1988, formally apologized to the interned Japanese Americans. It authorized payments of $20,000 to each surviving internee. Total payments between 1988 and 1998, approximately $1.6 billion to 82,000 surviving internees. The compensation was approximately 12 cents per dollar of the original economic loss. Daniel Issei continued to serve in the U.S. Senate through 2012. He held positions including Chair of Senate Appropriations, Chair of Senate Indian Affairs, and President pro tempore of the U.S. Senate from 2010 to 2012. He died at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, of respiratory complications, on December 17, 2012, at the age of 88. He had served 50 consecutive years in the United States Senate. His final word, spoken to his wife Irene at 1400 hours, was the Hawaiian word, aloha. It can mean either greeting or farewell. In the context of a deathbed, it is taken to mean both at once. He was buried at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, Punchbowl, in Honolulu on December 22, 2012. The funeral was attended by 15,000 people. President Obama delivered the senior eulogy. The senior 442nd veteran in attendance was a man named Hideo Maehara, age 93. He was the only lost battalion rescue veteran of the 442nd still alive. He had been a corporal in K Company. He had been 30 meters behind PFC Hajiro on the charge uphill 617 on October 28, 1944. He had survived with no major wounds. Maehara died on July 4, 2018, at the age of 99, at his home in Pearl City, Hawaii. With his death, no lost battalion rescue veteran of the 442nd remained alive. The last living 442nd veteran of any operation was Lawson Sakai of Manteca, California, a corporal in the 100th Infantry Battalion. He died on December 17, 2020, at the age of 96. The Go for Broke Monument in Little Tokyo, Los Angeles, was dedicated on June 5, 1999. It lists the names of every Nisei soldier killed in the Second World War. The names total 762. The names are inscribed in granite, in alphabetical order, in letters 50 mm tall. The most visited section is the one listing the 121 men of the 442nd killed during the Lost Battalion rescue. What the 442nd Regimental Combat Team asks us, 82 years after PFC Barney Hajiro charged uphill into German machine gun fire while his sister Mary was behind barbed wire at Manzanar, is the same question Senator Issei asked at the U.S. Capitol on June 21, 2000. The question was, what does a country owe to citizens who fight for it while it imprisons their parents? The answer, on the morning of October 28, 1944, was, it owes them whatever they ask for, and they may not survive to ask. The answer, on June 21, 2000, was, it owes them every medal it had, 55 years late. It owed them more than that. The Civil Liberties Act of 1988 was a partial answer. The Medal of Honor upgrades of 2000 were a further partial answer. Inouye's 50 consecutive years in the Senate were the longest sustained partial answer. And the 762 names on the granite wall in Little Tokyo are, in 2026, still 762 names. The country owes each of them, individually, more than the country can now pay. So this is the question the 442nd leaves us with, 82 years after 121 young Americans died in the Vosges to rescue 211 Texans, while their own mothers were behind barbed wire in California, Wyoming, Arkansas, Utah, and 7 other places. It has not yet been answered in full. It probably cannot be. The men who earned it are dead. The granite wall is, in 2026, 762 names. The American flag behind it is the same flag the men of the 442nd died beneath. The arithmetic, in this specific case, has not balanced. The country knows it.